You're in the Business Insurance Zone with me, Steve Savant, national insurance columnist and financial color commentator. And all this week we're doing our series on building your business and protecting your practice. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about governance and the ownership experience with David F. Sterling.
When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Well, welcome everyone to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Steve Savant, your host, and we're broadcasting live to a nationwide audience of financial professionals right out here in Fountain Hills, Arizona, home of America's largest fountain. And actually, I want to add to my introduction, salespeople, our registered investment advisors. I don't know what to call them, David, after our last couple of shows.
You can make up almost any acronym you want.
And by the way, I'm the king of all that is acronym, and I'm thinking about all the new accreditations. I want to run a school and start to substitute for our traditional ones and come up with something that's much more bland that actually addresses purveyor of products or salespeople. Try to give them a little upgrade on what they really call themselves. We talked about so much yesterday, and if you missed any of these shows, you need to hop back out to our website, www.brokersalliance.com. As soon as you come to the homepage, hit the big red on-demand button, and you'll see all of our shows with David. I'm telling you, especially the Tuesday, Wednesday show, that's going to go viral because we went outside the 9 dots. Hopefully we didn't go outside FINRA. So I'm hoping for the best on that. Today we're talking about governance, though. This is not a word that I use very often. This is a David F. Sterling word. Now, when you talk about governance, David, what are you talking about? I mean, I know what you said. We prepped for the show, but I think that's a new term in the language of the sales process and the fulfillment process.
Yeah, the fulfillment process is kind of intriguing because you're drawing a distinction between two elements that relates back to that whole concept, am I a salesperson, am I an advisor? Mm-hmm. Because you can look at governance and the fulfillment process as being a continuum of activities that results in the client signing on the dotted line. Mm-hmm. And that's basically governing your own conduct, your process, and how you're going to execute on it. Mm-hmm. All very compliant, of course, because the tools will be provided to stay in those boundaries, right?
Right, exactly.
There you go. Now, but the other side of it is something that crosses over. It's kind of like a bridge that crosses over. Well, what about the day after the sale? Mm-hmm. What is the obligation? And it relates back again to that broker of product solutions or advisor. But what is the obligation that we have to the client, to the individual who purchased the product, to deliver on the promises made by the product, mm-hmm. by the sales material? That's another element of execution and governance.
Well, can I give you the best example that just came into my head, and it's no rogue thought. When I think about all of us who are selling supplemental income life insurance, it could be any version of this, whole life, indexed, current consumption UL, variable, all of us are trying to do the best possible ideas for the client by designing the contract in such a way that it really has a good chance of actually producing good income. But there are a lot of moving parts. We've made a lot of assumptions in that proposal, which, by the way, is just a form of advertisement. It sometimes has precious little to do with the contract. And now all of a sudden, we're talking about events that are going to happen 20 years down the road.
Very, very, very tough. You know, how do you define today that which is unknown tomorrow? Mm-hmm. That is a real, real challenge. And it goes to an interesting point you made, all the moving parts. Now, and I couldn't help but think immediately about life insurance. Mm-hmm. Because who knows what tomorrow may bring. So, and kind of relating it back, it's looking at the representations made, mm-hmm. and having the client. I'm going to oversimplify something, and you're going to have to help me because this is where mm-hmm. you're the expert. But on that life insurance side, I guess one of the simplistic areas is, am I doing a current assumption mm-hmm. or a
contractual guarantee?
Contractual guarantee. And I guess, from a more legal framework, I sit back and say, oh my goodness, what does that entail? And in the sales process, what can I do to help the client understand what it means mm-hmm. in either framework?
Well, let me ask you about this, because now that we're talking, that's a tough one. Yeah. Managing distribution during live sales and all the things we told them we do. And by the way, it's in the actual illustration, so we did that. Now, but my other thing is to go something simpler, like I just sold an annuity. It's not going to be annuitized. I don't have to look at this for 7 years. I think people sell like that. I sold it. It's a 7-year hold. I'm out of there. See you later.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to beat that dead horse. In many situations, that's okay. You know, because why? Because the producer, the agent, defined the relationship surrounding the purchase at that point. And that's why it all relates back to rules of engagement. So the right expectation and understanding is created. So, you know, it's interesting as I think about all of the intricacies of these financial product contracts, it always relates back to that point you made. You know, for instance, I guess a number of life contracts are going under, you know, they're going down because perhaps I've seen where you have illustrated rates.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have current rates, and you just have to match them up. Well, does the client know how to look at that? You know, and we're getting involved in areas of analyzing current situations to see if modifications might be appropriate. That's a form of governance and monitoring of the financial life of the client in the ownership of products. Are we holding ourselves out a little bit differently when we go down that path?
That is a scary thought, because if you're thinking about monitoring, surveillance, doing contract maintenance, I mean, that's what annual reviews are supposed to be doing. And if we're not doing that, we've really cut our client out from the moorings of our original rules of engagement, and they're on their own. And that's where I see governance being a real problem. When we come back, we're going to talk more about governance and the ownership experience, which, by the way, we're looking for referred leads all the time. Isn't the ownership experience of the client we just wrote, isn't that part of us getting referrals? If we're not willing to nurture our client, I don't know how we're going to get referrals. After the break, we're going to talk more about governance and ownership.
You're listening to the insurance industry's #1 resource for products, planning ideas, carrier information, and interviews you can use. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Companies in our business are always touting service, products, and underwriting. And we do that too. But here's the difference. Now enter the world of the elite producer with a value package that cuts us out of the pack. A BD that approves social media marketing of non-FINRA products and doesn't take an override. With the best competition desk in the industry, and for our loyal producers, a true group health plan. No one offers that. Brokers Alliance does. Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I am your host, Steve Savant. I'm with David F. Sterling. We're talking about how do you maintain a relationship with a client? What are your obligations? I think they're there. I think that you are obligated. If you're a professional, you're going to be looking at surveillance, monitoring, annual statements. You need to be engaged in the product that you sold, not just the day that you closed and got the delivery statement, but all the way out until the time that either you're retiring or you hand that over to another advisor. I mean, to me, this is a huge obligation, and we're really hurting ourselves on the issue of referred leads. We have to get into governance and execution. And to me, what we're talking about now, David, this is huge, and I need you to really address this because it's for our better practice. This is something that this is for our own good.
And you know, I really do appreciate the take you have on this, because even with that broad spectrum of elements that represent what we want to accomplish and deliver to the client, you still have that opportunity to define the limitations. You know, I'm not promising the world, but there are elements that I can promise. When you look at a life insurance product, I'll say to a client, I say, here's a rumor. I'm not going to be around probably for the life of that policy. It's a simple statement. It creates a great dialogue because what, in fact, I'm saying to the client, let's talk a little bit for a moment about what does it mean to create the best prospects or good prospects for that successful outcome. And that's a great discussion point to have with a client, because immediately the client, you know, unless they're on something that I haven't run across yet. That didn't go off well, but anyway. But to the point, to the point, that client then all of a sudden will understand I have obligations to this. I have to, and by the way, this creates great business synergies and opportunities, because where the client typically looks, the family members. I won't get into a lot of legal gobbledygook, but all of a sudden the bridge to the multi-generational concept, which is obviously a great arena to work in, is developed automatically. That's where most clients are going to have to look. I'm not going to be around forever.
When I think about us, and it is, I mean, we're mortal. We're not going to be around forever. I'm looking at things that we're selling today, and we're purveyors of income scenarios, retirement income scenarios for people in their 40s and 50s. The odds are not only will I be retired, but I won't be able to be part of the fulfillment or the execution process. And that's why I have been, and this is a little for Steve here, I put in all my scenarios. I try to use the application remark box all the time and put that in the memo. What do I want to occur so it becomes part of the contract? To me, it's really important. And what we're talking about here is not only servicing, but I think we have a moral obligation to step up to the plate and make sure that somebody else, if we're not going to be around, somebody is going to be our substitute. All right, somebody's going to be our contingent consultant here. Somebody has to step into that place.
And you're exactly right. You know, I think that speaks volumes to at least go to that discussion, because quite candidly, here's another rumor: these contracts don't operate on automatic pilot. Imagine that.
Well, now you're getting into the issue of, I always see myself as a sales launcher, but you're talking about sales execution. I mean, the product execution itself. And I think this is where we are woefully short on, from an industry point of view. I think we need to go down this road.
I do think we need to go down this road, but I think we want to do it in a manner that is well defined, is limited, does not promise too much. You know, I think there's where those who have been involved in those elements of contract analysis, you know, what is embedded in that contract that enables us at least to address in such a fashion that the client understands, not that it's a predicament, but it's a natural outflow that we need to look at this element of continuation, whether it's my obligation, and I'm not going to go out on a limb and say I'm obligated to set up a successor plan for me. I won't go that far. I like the thinking that actually you have a group of professionals that are coming together, but I also am realistic and know there are sole practitioners out there. So the question then becomes, for the sole practitioner, how to have that dialogue without exposing him or herself to unnecessary criticism and complaint. And I think that's doable. Yes, I think it ups the ante a little bit about the substance of the conversation, and a point that I love that you brought up about the content of the contracts, what they're about.
I'm thinking, you know, especially we do a lot of our producers are very attuned to doing combination annuities, laddered annuities, layered annuities. This is not so much that the product in itself is sophisticated, but the strategies, the duration of those annuities, and when they take constructive receipt of it. This is a lot going on here, and that's spread generally minimum over 10 years, most of them a lot longer. So when I'm looking at 4 or 5 contracts, and I'm a advisor at 60, right? Who's going to be there to execute what I laid out, which is a good strategy, but I'm worried about execution now.
I love that. And there's so many venues that we can go to, but I'm going to go to one immediately, and that is there again. I'm being repetitive. There is again your link to the discussion. If there are children, if there are close relations of a younger age, if the client is willing to engage, interesting enough, those who are often already listed in those legal roles through the power of attorney or the trust document under the will or the revocable trust. That is this is, I think, without question, one of the greatest opportunities in automatic default bridges to cross with minimal effort, because unknown to the client, that backup support resource is already there in that role. They don't know it. Clients often not completely sure how it works. That is something
The Biz is brought to you by Brokers Alliance, a national leader in insurance products, support services, and educational workshops. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.